Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Manachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Mr. Paramahamsa Parajikacharya Ashtotar to the Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parajikacharya Ashtotar to the Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Give me 1 second here. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On the 16th day of February, 2026 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 17, the divisions of faith, text number 26 and 27 at the bottom of page 657. So we'll just chant the first one, then I'll read the second one myself. Sadbhave, Sadubhave, Cha, Sad, Iti, Etad, Prayujyate, Prashaste, Karmani, Tṛthā, Sat, Shabdah, Pṛthā, yujyate. Sadbhave sarubhave cha sadityetat prayujyate. Prashaste karmani tatha Satshabdak partha yujyate. Sadbhave sarubhave cha sadityetat prayujyate. Prashaste karmani tatha Satshabdak partha yujyate. Sadbhave sarubhave cha sadityetat prayujyate. Prashaste karmani tatha Satshabdak partha yujyate. Sadbhave sadhubhave cha sadityetat prayujyate. Prashaste karmani tatha Satshabdak partha yujyate. Jeff? Sadbhave sadhubhave cha sadityetat prayujyate. Prashaste karmani tatha Satshabdak partha yujyate. Go ahead, Ami. Sadbhave sarubhave cha sadityetat prayujyate. Prashaste karmani tatha Satshabdak partha yujyate. Sadbhave sadhubhave cha sadityetat prayujyate. Prashaste karmani tatha Satshabdak partha yujyate. Anyone online?
Sadbhave sadhubhave cha
Sadbhave sarubhave cha
sadityetat prayujyate.
sadityetat prayujyate.
Prashaste karmani tatha
Prashaste karmani tatha
Satshabda partha yujyate.
Satshabda partha yujyate. Okay, so let's see. I'll just chant a second with myself. Yagye tapasi dani cha stiti saditi chochyate karma chaiva tadartiyam sadityeva bidiyate. Word by word for the first one. Satbhave in the sense of the nature of the Supreme. Sarubhave in the sense of the nature of the devotee. Cha also sat, the word sat, iti thus, etat, this, prayujyate. Prashaste in bona fide karmani activities. Tata also sat shabde, the sound sat, partha osanapita yujyate is used. Translation. The absolute, Translation. The absolute truth is the objective of devotional sacrifice, and it is indicated by the word sat. The performer of such sacrifice is also called sat, as are all works of sacrifice, penance, and charity, which, true to the absolute nature, are performed to please the Supreme Person, O Son of Pṛthā. So remember, he's explaining the words, the phrase Om Tat Sat. It's kind of a mantra. Purport. The words prashaste karmani, or prescribed duties, indicate that there are many activities prescribed in the Vedic literature, which are purificatory processes, beginning from the time of conception up to the end of one's life. Such purificatory processes are adopted for the ultimate liberation of the living entity. In all such activities, it is recommended that one vibrate Om Tat Sat. The words sadbhave and sadhubhave indicate the transcendental situation. Acting in Krishna consciousness is called sattva, and one who is fully conscious of the activities of Krishna consciousness is called a sadhu. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 3.25.25, it is said that the transcendental subject matter becomes clear in the association of the devotees. The words used are satam prasangat. Without good association, one cannot achieve transcendental knowledge. When initiating a person or offering the sacred thread, one vibrates the words Om Tat Sat. Similarly, in all kinds of performance of yajna, sacrifice, the object is the Supreme, Om Tat Sat. The word tadartiyam, the word tadartiyam further means offering service to anything which represents the Supreme, including such service as cooking and helping in the Lord's temple, or any other kind of work for broadcasting the glories of the Lord. These supreme words, Om Tat Sat, are thus used in many ways to perfect all activities and make everything complete. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So we're almost at the end of this chapter, and Krishna has been explaining these words, Om Tat Sat. And I'd like to focus in on this verse that he refers to right in the middle of the purport, 3:25:25. This is in the teachings of Lord Kapila Dev to his mother, Devahuti. And this occurs in an 8-verse section which I have dubbed the Sadhu Sangashtaka. You may have heard of this before. I referred to it. Sadhu Sangashtaka. So 8 verses describing the glories of associating with sadhus, sadhu sangha, the famous satsanga that we, right? I think that's an English word by now. Satsang, right? English is a vacuum cleaner. It just gets in all words, French, German, you know. So satsang is a well-known word. I'm sure it's in a dictionary. So let us just contemplate this importance of sadhu sangha and the importance of this 3:25:25, which really describes the central purpose of the whole Krishna consciousness movement. So in these verses, which come near the beginning of his instructions to his mother, he begins with this word prasangat. That's the first word of the first verse. And notice that phrase is also used in this verse, satam prasangat, it comes up. So what he says is, prasangat ajaram pashamatmana kavayo vadu, saeshu sadhukato moksha dwaram apavratam. Mundane affection keeps us bound to birth and death infernal, but love for sadhus opens wide the doors to life eternal. I put it into a little poem. Now, hold that in mind, that word prasanga. Prasanga here, now sangha is a very important word. It means attachment, and it also means association. And it's one of these pairs of this word that has 2 meanings, and one is the cause of the other. Association causes attachment, right? When that's why your mother is always wondering who you're associating with, because she knows if you get attached to the wrong kind of people, it'll mess you up. So sangha is going on all the time. As soon as we open our eyes in the morning, we start going about our day, we're moving among those things that we're attached to, probably many of them, mostly attached rather than detached, because we're in our own home and our own environment. And as we go throughout our day, we come in touch with things that we're attached to, things that we're averse to, So, but when we associate, and something that's favorable seems to be promising happiness and sense gratification, we become attached to those things. We want to do it again and again, smell a certain flower that we like, eat certain food that we like, because we've done it before, and we do it again. So this process, now this prefix pra is very important in Sanskrit. In fact, Prabhupada would give it a little phrase. Prakrishna Rupena, which means to intensify or vary, you know? Like there's compassionate and super compassionate, right? So super is like, brings it to the top phrase, right? Super compassionate, otherwise known as in the Sanskrit, what is it? Padamakaruna, right? And it has the same beat, Padamakaruna, super compassionate. So if it's in the song, I won't go into that right now. So here he's saying, Prasangam Ajaram Pasham means very strong ropes, very strong attachments. They're like ropes in the heart, you see, that we develop. And they're speaking especially about attachment to other persons. So very strong attachment to that we have for ordinary people, for people who are not sadhus. The wise person knows that that very strong attachment has to be transferred to the sadhus, and that opens up the door to liberation. Then the next question was, okay, who's the sadhus? So the next verse describes, this is a famous verse, describes what a sadhu is. Tatikshava, karunika, suridak sarvadehinam, ajatra shatravak shantha, sadhavak sadhubhushana. Now sadhubhushana means the ornaments in the form of character, different qualities of a sadhu. Here they are, this is the list. First of all, tolerance. And then compassion. Now these two are essential if you're going to try to spread Krishna consciousness or do anything which may be controversial, but you're doing it for the welfare of people, but they don't know that. And you can become persecuted, or they throw rocks at you or whatever, or even crucify you. So Tatikshava Karunina Suridak Sarvadehinam, the friend of all living entities, not just human beings. Prabhupada makes the point when in the purport, this also means animals, especially cows. Every living being, you're the friend. Surita means, Surita, not just a friend, but the well-wishing friend. Surit means deeply in the heart. Suritak Sarvade. Ajatra Shatravak. Because of that, you have no enmity toward anyone. You yourself don't have any enemies, though others may see you as an enemy. You see the difference is a very important distinction. Ajata Shatavak. And because of all these activities, Shanta, you're peaceful in yourself, because you're attuned to Krishna desires. How did you get these qualities? Not mentioned by being a devotee, by practicing devotional service. Ajata Shatavak Shanta, Sadhavak Sadhubhushana. These are the ornaments of a sadhu. And then the next verse, okay, well, how did one get these? So then Kapila Dev, speaking in the role of an incarnation of Krishna. He's Krishna, He says, Maya nannena bhavena bhaktin kurvanta yedvidam. Saeva sadhu sukato, Maya nannena bhavena bhaktin kurvanta yedvidam. Matkate chakta kamanas chakta swajana bandhava. So, here he says, my ananyena bhavena, by one pointed devotional service to me. You see, one acquires these qualities. Maya bhavena, bhaktin kurvanta yedvidham, very, very determined devotional service, one pointed determined. And what are the symptoms? Matkate chakta karmanas. For my sake, they'll give up any activity. In other words, anything that's not in the line of devotional service. Matkate chakta, giving up karmanas, and even shakta swajana bandhava, if their emotional involvement with their family and friends, is an impediment to devotional service, they'll even give that up. And that's sometimes the most difficult, taking sannyas or whatever. So that he's describing there. So then he goes on and he says, what do they do? And then this is a wonderful verse. It says, Marashya. Now, Ashraya means taking shelter. But in this case, it means sound vibration that takes shelter of me. In other words, those words glorifying me, my holy name, and so forth. Madashya kata mrishta. Shinvanti katayanti cha. Tapanti bhavatastaban naitan man kata chetasa. Very nice verse. Madashya kata mrishta. Shinvanti katayanti. So they hear and they chant and they repeat those words that are related to me, my holy name, and descriptions, instructions like this. Madashya kata mrishta. Mrishta means very sweet, very delightful, these sounds. Kata mrishta. They hear and they chant. And because they thus are absorbed in thought of me by hearing and chanting, tapanti bhavatas tapan, the normal sufferings in this world, they don't feel the pain of them. No, the tolerance becomes even more deep and more feasible because they're absorbed in me. Think Haridas Thakur, or others Prahlad, who are able to tolerate because they're so absorbed in thinking of Krishna and chanting and hearing of Krishna that they don't even feel they're protected by Krishna. Because their mind is fixed on me. Prabhupada, in explaining this verse, gives the example. You'll never guess in a million years who he gives the example of. Stalin, that leader of Russia. Yeah. Prabhupada heard that he once had to have surgery on his belly, at some but he was always afraid of being assassinated. And he figured if they gave him chloroform, put him to sleep, that some assassin would come in. Oh, now's our chance, and I'll kill him. So I don't need any chloroform. You can do the surgery. So he's tolerating, who could tolerate an operation like that. But this is an example. Even a mundane person can do that. But devotees are able to do it. But actually being transcendental and not actually even feeling it. So so then he goes on, and then he says, so you need to search out, oh my dear mother, please search out these such sadhus, and by their association, you will get rid of the faults that arise from bad association. And there's a verse in Nimana Moha, Jita Sangha Dosha. This is in the Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter near the beginning. Nirmana Moha, by getting free from false pride and illusion, you'll be able to Jita Sangha Dosha. Now, by bad association, you get faults. You acquire qualities of anger and intolerance and all these things. So, but you can conquer them by associating with sadhus. You can cleanse away those bad qualities. This is the whole point. All right, so then he gets to the verse, that's 325-25. Okay? And here's the culmination. Satam prasanga. Notice the same word, prasanga. Now here, it's positive. Prasanga means meaningful association. It means basically hearing from the sadhus, with one pointed attention, with faith, like that, eagerly. So that's satam. That's satam and sadhu is the same thing. So among the sadhus, satam prasangan. What are you going to hear? Mama virya samvido, my glories. You're going to hear accounts of my character and my activities. He's speaking as Krishna, as the incarnation. Bhavanti, which ritkarna rasayanak, which produces delight for the ear and the heart. Delightful to hear and also cleanses the heart. Ritkarna rasayana means a life-giving elixir. This pure Krishna Katha, Ritkarna rasayana Katha. Tadjoshanad, and engaging in this process. You say, meeting with the sadhus and hearing from them, and like that. Tadjoshanad ashu, quickly, Apavargavartmani, which is the path of liberation. Apavargavartmani, which produces shraddha, increases your shraddha, ratir, bhaktu, anukamishati. Step by step, deepens your faith in Krishna, in the process of Krishna consciousness. Rati, your attraction for Krishna, and bhakti, your loving devotion to Krishna, are all nourished by this essential process of hearing and chanting about me in association with devotees. And what is the essence of all of that? Harinam Sankirtan. I chant, you hear, you chant, I hear, and we glorify Krishna. That is the process of the age. So that this verse is central to the whole process of devotional service. It describes the society, Prabhupada make the point, society, association of devotees for nourishing Krishna consciousness. So I just wanted to point that out. Prabhupada, he loved this verse. He would quote it quite often. So thank you for letting me refer to that. The Sadhu Sangashtika, that's great. All right, let's go on. We'll finish the chapter here. Ashradaya hutam dattam tapas taptam kritam chayat asadidyuchyate Pṛthā nachatat pratyano hiha. Anything done as sacrifice, charity, or penance without faith in the Supreme, O son of Pṛthā, is impermanent. It is called asat and is useless both in this life and the next. Purport: anything done without the transcendental objective, whether it be sacrifice, charity, or penance, is useless. Therefore, in this verse it is declared that such activities are abominable. Everything should be done for the Supreme in Krishna consciousness. Without such faith and without the proper guidance, there can never be any fruit. In all the Vedic scriptures, faith in the Supreme is advised. In the pursuit of all Vedic instructions, the ultimate goal is the understanding of Krishna. No one can obtain success without following this principle. Therefore, the best course is to work from the very beginning in Krishna consciousness under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. That is the way to make everything successful. In the conditional state, people are attracted to worshipping demigods, ghosts, or yakshas like Kuvera. The mode of goodness is better than the modes of passion and ignorance, but one who takes directly to Krishna consciousness is transcendental to all three modes of material nature. Although there is a process of gradual elevation, if one, by the association of pure devotees, takes directly to Krishna consciousness, that is the best way. And that is recommended in this chapter. To achieve success in this way, one must first find the proper spiritual master and receive training under his direction. Then one can achieve faith in the Supreme. When that faith matures, in course of time it is called love of God. This love is the ultimate goal of the living entities. One should therefore take to Krishna consciousness directly. That is the message of this 17th chapter. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purport to the 17th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of the divisions of faith. So let's do a quick review of this chapter. Now, very obviously and very logically, this chapter takes off, starts where the previous chapter left off. And what did Krishna say? The second to last verse of the 16th chapter. Yak shastra vidamutsvija vartate kamakarataha nasasiddham avapnoti nasukam napanam gatim. Now these last two verses are worth studying because they're very, very important. Here he's saying, one who discards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme destination. So first, the impetus is we first have to know what are those scriptural injunctions, and then we have to make the conscious decision to follow them as far as we are able. And if make that decision, that Krishna will give us more and more ability to follow them and to be able to follow them. And then the conclusion of the verse, it begins with the word tasmat, therefore. So it's a perfect ending to the chapter. The conclusion is, tasmat shastra pramanam te karya bhavastito gyatva shastra vadanoktam karma karta miharasi. One should therefore understand what is duty and what is not duty by the regulations of the scriptures. Now what do you mean by what is duty and what is not means? What one should do and what one should avoid doing. Remember in this previous chapter, one of the qualities of the demons, they don't know what pravritti and nivritti is. They don't know what they should do and what they should avoid doing. And that's a very dangerous way of living in this world, because you end up doing what you feel like doing, and yet, which is the modes of passion, and you end up completely remaining entangled in the modes of nature. So one has to have faith. One has to have faith in the Shastra, you see. And that was probably one of his main goals of coming here, to be a personification of the Shastra, and to give it in such a way, and that a certain number of fortunate souls would be inspired to follow it, and then feel the benefits, feel their lives being transformed, and that will deepen their faith and their determination. And as soon as you do that, then your whole life becomes transformed, and you become an agent of also inspiring others to try it and develop that faith. The whole thing is founded on faith, is that yes, this is valuable. I think this is valuable, therefore I want to pursue it and learn more about it. And the more we strengthen our intelligence, then we're able to guide the mind and the senses to act in the proper way. And
on the path. Otherwise, we're off the path and we're on the path to hell. So now, so keeping in mind those two verses, now the 124 begins with this phrase, Yak Shastra Vidam, right? Giving up. What about Utsvija? What about giving up this Shastra? What happens? So that's a very dangerous course. No happiness, no supreme destination, no perfection. So Arjuna begins his question in the 17th chapter, Yak Shastra Vidam Utsvija. Same phrase, you see? What is the situation of those who do not follow the principles of Scripture? They give them up, you see, but worship according to their own imagination. Are they in goodness, passion, or ignorance? So it's all going to be in terms of the modes of nature. And if you recall, he goes through different things. Food, food's in the mode of passion and ignorance, sacrifice, penance, these different things. And finally, he talks about this Om Tat Sat. And at last, it goes back to sacrifice, charity, penance, anything done without faith in the Supreme is impermanent. It is called as asat and is useless both in this life and the next. So we don't want to waste time. We don't want to waste this life. So the thing is, time is our most valuable possession, and we have less of it. As if every time the sun rises and sets, it takes away. There's a verse like that. It takes away the life of everyone except those who are glorifying the Supreme Lord. Then they're getting closer to the eternal life when there's no loss of time anymore. You're beyond time. Remember that in the near the end of the Brahma Samhita, there's a famous verse which I won't go into Sanskrit. That in Goloka Vrindavan, there's no past or future. There's only the eternal present. Every day is a new adventure with Krishna. No one gets old. The whole experience doesn't get old. It's ever fresh. Where do you find that in the material world? Every day you're getting older. You're getting less, able to. And then when old age comes, it says, "Oh, no, I can't enjoy what I used to enjoy. Oh my God, let me go to do Tai Chi. Maybe get it back." Isn't it? It becomes so painful, the loss, for the materialist. But for the devotee, a pure devotee especially, he's saying, and we saw with Prabhupada, he wasn't at all disturbed when the end came. And some of even our own devotees, Vijendra Nandana was very exemplary. In fact, I was told, I didn't know this until recently, that those who were here, he retired from his job. He had, for years, he was doing for I don't know how many months out of the year, he would travel around America and go to different fairs and sell what we call in Yiddish tchotchkes. Does that name ring a bell? It's like this and that, whatever, nothing sinful, In this way, support his family. His wife is here. She's still here. Chatura. He also had a son, Aja. And he had his apartment here. And then he would spend, I don't know, 2 or 3 months every year in Mayapur, And he would always be there for Gaurapranim, and he would be on the Parakram. And he knew so many things. He would be one of the speakers on the Parakram because he was very familiar with the places and the people and everything, In other words, he became absorbed. He also was getting the association of Jana Nivas, who was one of the twins who were there. They were one of the first pujaris of Radha Madhava, the small Radha Madhava, when they first installed him. And then we continued that for 20, 30 years, through Prabhupada's disappearance and on, even today. Jananivas is there, his brother succumbed to COVID when that happened. But he would go and he was learning from Jananivas, intimate aspects of Bhakti Yoga, So then he retired and he came here. And he retired, and he was coming every morning to the morning program, it was very exemplary. And I didn't know this because I would go back to my apartment and do my service, but he would hang out here. And he was giving his association to devotees, you can ask Mukunda. He became very close with Mukunda Charan and some others. And so that went on for some time. So wonderful classes. He would always bring a ton of books. He wasn't into so much the iPad or anything. He had a lot of books with him. Very wonderful classes. They're on the YouTube. You can get them. And then after, I don't know, maybe 6 months, suddenly I saw it was difficult for him to bow down. He had some problem with his back, and so I thought maybe he sprained himself or something. He didn't know what it was. But then it turned out that he had cancer, and he had this terminal cancer. And I heard, I forgot who mentioned this once in class, that when he learned that, he came and he was laughing. He was laughing after the diagnosis. And he said, "Oh, I thought I was retiring, but I thought I'm going back to Godhead." And at a certain point, he was just lying at home, and he got the diagnosis okay. And it wasn't, he didn't go through any treatment to try to prolong things or anything like. He was ready to go. And devotees, this one that we heard, I wasn't able to visit him. He lived on the second floor, much, higher than even I am, And I had seriously sprained my ankle. I mean, I could hardly walk. I had crutches and everything, There was no way I could climb the stairs. I called him up. We had some nice conversation. But I heard that he was there he was doing this business with one other devotee. And so he came, I forget his name now, and he was sitting with him. And Raj was lying in bed, and he said, "Well, who else is in the room? There's this crowd here." And it was always only this one devotee. And so the devotee knew what it was. It was like, it was the opposite of the Yamadutas. It was like Vaikuntha representatives coming, just waiting for him. And so he asked him, "Is it the good people?" He says, "Yeah, it's the good people." They weren't threatening or anything. They were just giving them their association. And he passed very peacefully and successfully, So that's a lesson for us, because he's one of us, He wasn't born in a devotee family, but he became very advanced and was very inspirational, and his classes were very good. So that's the result, of having great faith. And there's some wonderful pictures of him. He was a teacher. He was a teacher in the Gurukul, both in Dallas and in Vrindavan. And there's one picture I remember seeing of him. Prabhupada had come to visit Dallas. He would come to visit the temple and, of course, the school. And there was Raj, in the front, just looking at Prabhupada with so much love and ecstasy, that here he had this nice association. He was able to get, Prabhupada's direct, intimate association like that. So this is, encouraging, because he was an American regular. He took it up and he became very advanced. And he showed the symptoms of devotion, which is eagerness to advance and determination to go back to Godhead. And he was successful. So, if there's no further discussion, we will commence the last chapter. Are we ready for it? Final chapter. Conclusion, the perfection of enunciation. Arjuna Vacha. Sannyasasya Mahabaho Tattvam Ichchami Veditum Tyagasya Chabashikesha Pratagkeshi Nishudana. Arjuna said, "Almighty Armed One, I wish to understand the purpose of renunciation, Tyaga, and of the renounced order of life, sannyas. O killer of the Keshi demon, master of the senses." Purport. Actually, the Bhagavad Gita is finished in 17 chapters. The 18th chapter is a supplementary summarization of the topics discussed before. In every chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna stresses that devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate goal of life. This same point is summarized in the 18th chapter as the most confidential path of knowledge. In the first 6 chapters, stress was given to devotional service, yoginam api sarvesham. Of all yogis or transcendentalists, one who always thinks of me within himself is best. So that's the last verse of the 6th chapter. In the next 6 chapters, pure devotional service and its nature and activity were discussed. In the third 6 chapters, knowledge, renunciation, the activities of material nature and transcendental nature, and devotional service were described. It was concluded that all acts should be performed in conjunction with the Supreme Lord, represented by the words Om Tat Sat, which indicate Vishnu, the Supreme Person. The third part of the Bhagavad Gita has shown that devotional service and nothing else is the ultimate purpose of life. This has been established by citing past acharyas and the Brahma Sutra, the Vedanta Sutra. Certain impersonalists consider themselves to have a monopoly on the knowledge of Vedanta Sutra. But actually, the Vedanta Sutra is meant for understanding devotional service. For the Lord himself is the composer of the Vedanta Sutra, and he is its knower. That is described in the 15th chapter. In every scripture, every Veda, devotional service is the objective. That is explained in the Bhagavad Gita. As in the 2nd chapter, a synopsis of the whole subject matter was described, in the 18th chapter also the summary of all instructions is given. The purpose of life is indicated to be renunciation and attainment of the transcendental position above the 3 material modes of nature. Arjuna wants to clarify the 2 distinct subject matters of the Bhagavad Gita, namely, renunciation, tyaga, and the renounced order of life, sannyas. Thus, he is asking the meaning of these 2 words. 2 words used in this verse to address the Supreme Lord, Rishikesha and Keshi Nishudana, are significant. Rishikesha is Krishna, the master of all senses, who can always help us attain mental serenity. Arjuna requests him to summarize everything in such a way that he, Arjuna, can remain equipoised. Yet, he has some doubts, and doubts are always compared to demons. He therefore addresses Krishna as Keshi Nishudana. Keshi was a most formidable demon who was killed by the Lord. Now Arjuna is expecting Krishna to kill the demon of doubt. Keshi is the horse. You remember that horse who came attack Vrindavan? So Rishikesha. Rishika are the senses, and Isha means the master. And whose senses? Ours. He's the master of everyone's senses. But people don't know it. Certainly animals don't know it. They're just using the senses to, do sense gratification. And animalistic humans do the same thing. This is my senses. I'm going to do what I want, right? But devotional service means to recognize Krishna as the actual master and enjoyer of our sense activities. That's really what it's all about. And the sadhana bhakti means systematically training the senses to connect to Krishna through service, beginning with the ears, or sometimes beginning with the tongue, because the tongue is vibrating, the ear is hearing. You see, what is it? I forget the verse exactly. But how does it start? Oh yes, I forget these. We cannot understand the Lord with our present senses. But beginning with the tongue, if we begin serving Him, then Krishna will gradually reveal Himself, and that begins with, of course, chanting the holy name. So the tongue and the ear work together, and so Arjuna wants Krishna to summarize now, right, the whole thing. What is the purpose of renunciation and the renounced order of life? Because we don't often realize it or think of it in these terms. But when we're doing devotional service, when we're acting for Krishna's pleasure, we're in the mode of renunciation. We're renouncing our own pleasures and acting for Krishna's pleasure. Now, if we do it right, after a little while, we find that that's a great pleasure, right? Doing something for Krishna. And that may require a lot of effort, a sacrifice, and we find that the sacrifice, may be more than we expected, but we'll find that the pleasure becomes more than we expected also. I'll never forget this account. This is devotee Dharma Das. I don't know if he's still there in Miami at this point, but he was there for many, many years. And when I arrived in '83, I think he joined in '68 or whatever. He'd been there a long time. And he described once that he was working on the altar, every night, and he was helping to cook the sweets for the next morning. And there was a variety, of course. There's sandesh. There's something called pera, which I don't even know if we've ever tasted, But that was a common sweet, and of course burfi and all these different things. So there was a whole crew. But one day, or maybe there was 3 or 4 of them. But one day he was the only one doing it. So he had to, got all these sweets to do. So he stayed up all night. And then the next morning, he's, just before Mangalartik, he's going on the altar to offer the sweets. So he's, a little bit tipsy, he's walking, and then he glances at the deities and he's shocked. The usual smile on Radha Krishna's faces was really broad. I mean, noticeably broader, And he was, it really touched his heart. He'd worked so hard, and he was focused, and he made the sacrifice, and then he got the reciprocation, which is just a broad smile. It's to see Krishna smile. Now that's transcendental pleasure. To see Krishna pleased and to feel that you had something to do with it and feel great pleasure in that. That is the essence of bhakti. When it's happening 24 hours a day, when that's all like the pleasure that you feel, then you're a pure devotee. To only take your pleasure in Krishna's pleasure. Even the things that we normally do, which are part of our own pleasure, like sleeping or eating, you feel, oh, I'm eating this, this is Krishna tasted this, and he's so kind to give it to, its remnants, and to feel it's a sacrament, and that Krishna's pleased, to feel that Krishna's pleased. And the spiritual master, what is the verse we sing every morning? Chattu Vadashi Bhagavad Prasada Svadvana Triptan Haribhakti Sangat. That he's taking pleasure when he's seeing the devotees, taking the prasadam with great relish. That's his pleasure, not necessarily eating it. That's another kind of pleasure. So anyway, so this is a form of renunciation. It boils down to this. Sannyas, in its generic term, simply means complete renunciation. And that's pure devotion. People renouncing one's own separate pleasure, sense gratification, and working as hard as possible for Krishna's pleasure. And one finds, that's the real greater pleasure in that. Whereas it doesn't make any sense from the material point of view. We had with one fellow who was here, when the pandemic hit in early 2020, that's when it became serious, and we started to have devotees join. This one Govardhan came and stayed, and there were 2 or 3 others who joined, and they were seemingly very serious. And so this one fellow, he was a young kid, and he was born abroad or something, and he moved early on to come to America. But he hadn't quite mastered English language, and this was what finally did him in, because he couldn't read the books so very well. But at first he was very enthusiastic, and we'd see him always jumping and dancing. The young bodies like that. I was like that when I joined. I wasn't so young, but I was still athletic. And I said, oh, he's going to really do well, And he was reading Bhagavad Gita, and you remember at the beginning of the 9th chapter, 2nd verse, Raja Vidya Raja Guyam Pavatam Vidabhutaman Pratyakshavagamam Susukam Kartam Avviyam. This knowledge, this chapter in this 8th chapter, is it? So he's saying, no, 9th chapter, I'm sorry, that, this is the king of knowledge, the head of all education, right? Raja Vidya Raja Guyam. Pavitram is very purifying, the supreme. And the Susukam Kartam of him is very happily performed, because he was dancing. Yes, it is happily performed like that, But somehow, because he couldn't really read very well, this is the problem. So he was philosophically wasn't weak. And at a certain point, because then there's all these surrenders. So, Bhakta, it's your turn to do the pots, And unfortunately, Jim won't be able to come in today, so you'll have to, it's going to be a little tougher. So he's doing the pots all night, Anyway, something happened. I didn't know what happened, but at a certain point, he just couldn't take it, and maybe he disappeared. And later on, some devotees would contact him. He was still living in the area, and he came to conclude it was like slave mentality, like that slave mentality. So he obviously had a bad experience, and he wasn't coming back. Anyway. So cultivating the attitude of service and the surrender and the renunciation, it requires determination to get over the rough spots, because we all were conditioned in a certain way, if we hadn't had the great fortune to be raised in a devotee family. And sometimes it just seems, your previous, because all our life we've had, this orientation to life, which is, what's in it for me, and in other words, self-centered, and this is completely different. Now, obviously, in order to, really get serious at all, to join the ashram or to come regularly, you have to be getting something out of it. So you have to be doing something right. But the conditioning is so strong that if we're not careful, we're not chanting around so nicely or something happens, then our old nature can rear its ugly head, and we can say the doubts, the demons of doubts can come up, and you want to distance. Or sometimes what happens is that in the association of devotees, then your old nature comes out and you become angry and you make offense. And if you make offense and you don't atone for it, then it becomes very uncomfortable for you to stay amongst the association of devotees. Krishna doesn't let you. So that's why offense to devotees is so dangerous. It can really stop the process and everything. So I see we have a question. I could tell you're reaching for the mic. We have more mics now. Why don't you bring them all out? But just give him his own mic from now on. We have 3 instead of 2 now that we can.
How does a devotee make atonement when they've committed an offense?
Well, the best way, and this is prescribed in the Shastra, is to first of all realize, this is really dangerous for me. Not to atone for this, not to reconcile it with the devotee. So approaching the devotee, really, really sincerely apologizing, and maybe even offering to do some service or whatever. And if the devotee is really a devotee, then he's going to, of course, forgive you. But it has to be sincere on your side, and you realize that, this really was my old nature rearing its ugly head, and that I don't want this to be fatal for my devotional service. I had an experience way back in the 70s when I was in LA, and I'd been there a few years, so I had a little bit of duties to perform to work with the new bhaktas, So they knew me and I knew them, and I was counseling them. So one day this bhakta, I forget his name now, he came to me and said, I'm so troubled. I think he even actually had hit a devotee. And now I feel so bad about it. I said, yeah, you really got to go and apologize and reconcile with the devotee, So the next day I came back and he said, I just couldn't do it. I said, oh boy, this is, you're really in trouble. This is going to be perhaps fatal for your devotional service. Because he couldn't be enthusiastic about anything. It was just like weighing on him, And somehow or other, he just couldn't do the thing I kept prescribing to him, to genuinely apologize and ask the devotee to forgive him, even bow down, offer to do some service. So it was really illustrative of how dangerous, especially a corporal offense. If you read the Krishna book, you learn there's this one chapter near the end there where, oh boy, it's getting late. We never have enough time. Maybe we should start at 7. Anyway, and he's, who is most tolerant? Vishnu, Brahma, or Shiva, right? Who's the most, So then I forget the devotee who takes on the job of testing that, and he goes to Brahma, and he doesn't bow down, And Brahma is angry, But because this is his son or something, this is what his offspring, that he controls himself because he's Brahma, So then he goes to Shiva, and he won't embrace him or something like that because he's his brother, something. And Shiva gets ready to take care of, But luckily Parvati cools him and said, no, this is, intimate. Okay. So then he goes. So there's one that's in the mind where he didn't offer any respect to Brahma. But then there was actually he said something to Shiva, which was very insulting, And Shiva was able to control himself, And then he went to Vishnu and he kicked him on the chest, which is like the worst, corporal, And but Vishnu said, "Oh, did you hurt your foot? My chest is so hard. I'm so sorry." Because this was a Brahmin, like that. So it wasn't just that he was tolerant, that he had to control himself, but he was really genuinely sorry. Whereas Lakshmi was very angry with him, and therefore the Brahmins are always poverty-stricken or something, because she's the goddess of fortune. Anyway, so there's these 3 levels: in the mind by the words, and then corporal. And the last one is the worst. Actually. If we do make an offense, then it's really important to, as quickly as possible, to genuinely, with genuine regret, beg forgiveness. That I don't know what came over me. This is my old nature. What can I do for you? Like that. And if the devotee is a real devotee, then he'll, forgive you. But somehow, if you can't, maybe the devotee leaves. You can't do it. Then you have to chant a lot. You have to chant extra rounds. And I remember that happened in Miami one time, and the spiritual master there said you have to chant 64 rounds for a few days. And we saw him chanting in the temple. So that's another possibility. All right, I'm sorry, we got so late. We have time for only a quick poem. Sweet, sweet is my dear Lord's form. Sweet is still his face so fair, but his honey-scented gentle smile is sweet beyond compare.